Good afternoon. My name is Alena Shautsova. I'm an immigration attorney from Brooklyn, New York. And today I am having the slide presentation regarding new DHS regulations about students, coronavirus, and what USCIS decided to do in light of the issue that we're having, quarantine, and so on. So thank you for joining me today. I would like to here provide some updates on the fate of the students in the United States and suggest possible solution to the situation. So you may be aware that a couple of days ago, DHS, Department of Homeland Security, issued a memo about what's going to happen to students, international students in the United States. And if I had to talk about the students, I would divide them all into two large categories. Those who enrolled in English-only classes, right? They came to the United States to study English. Hi guys, thank you for joining. Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, Mr. Singh. And those who are enrolled and came or would like to study everything else. And I have to say that in my practice, I saw a lot of students coming to the United States for English-only studies. And this is a very flexible F1 visa that allows you to study English in various levels, extended numerous times. So many choose that option before they go for their master's degree or before they go for their bachelor's degree, associate degree, whatever degree they would like to pursue. And sometimes college requires you to first enroll in English learning classes. So it's one of the, I would say that that group of students is quite large. And at the same time, the regulations regarding English studies in the United States are quite tough. Why? It's because when you study English in the United States, and would like to get F1 visa in connection with that, you cannot enroll in any online courses. That's what the regulations state. But of course, regulations were written before coronavirus, before pandemic. Last pandemic hit the world about 100 years ago, so the regulations did not account for this situation. And a couple of days ago, Department of Homeland Security stated what they are going to do with students. Basically, what they say is this: if you are a student who is not in English-only course of study and your school is not going to reopen in fall semester for in-person classes, but will provide only online courses, which many schools are planning to do, to to help us fight coronavirus spread, such students will be barred from coming to the United States, from staying in the United States, from receiving visas to come to the United States. So if your school decides that it's better for the community, that they're not going to reopen for in-person classes, you as a student, you're going to suffer because your visa will be basically canceled. Removal proceedings may be initiated against you if you're in the United States, or a visa to you will not be issued for that school, or you will have to, you will not be able to enter the United States. Let's say you took time off and went home, and now you have the visa to come back, but the CBP will not allow you to enter the United States. This is in case if your school not going to go for in-person classes. Interestingly enough, schools that are going to practice hybrid model, where some classes are going to be online and some classes are going to be in person, such international students will be allowed to maintain their F1s and have their normal life in the United States. It's very interesting because if school will go for in-person classes only, a student will be allowed to take international student will be allowed to take only one class online, not to lose their status, or 3 credits. But if school declares that they're going to have a hybrid model, more than one class online will be allowed for student to take. Very, very interesting. But if you are a student, or you are planning to be a student who's going to study English only, no online classes will be allowed. Basically, from what I understand, English only class provided schools will either have to reject all the international students, those right on F visas, or offer in-person classes only. No other options they have. What happens if your school decides in the middle of semester to change their practices? Let's say first they decided, okay, we're going to try the hybrid model, see how it goes. And then they go and say, well, we would like to have only online classes because the virus is growing, we're not doing well. You will have to leave as a student. You will not be allowed to maintain your student status if in the middle of semester your school changes its practice. The international student, according to the memo we received, will not be allowed to stay in the United States and will have to leave or risk to accumulate unlawful presence time and being placed in removal proceedings. How will Department of Homeland Security find out what happened with your school? What classes you're going to have? You're going to be taking online or in person? Well, every school will have to update I-20s. I-20 is a document that is given to an international student that basically outlines the conditions of the studies that the school is offering. So every school now must update the I-20s they issued by August 4th. So the government will know if the school is offering online only or hybrid model or in-person classes. Also, schools who are going to have online only classes must report that to Department of Homeland Security by July 15th. And those who are going to offer online classes, hybrid classes, have a little bit longer until August 1st, I believe, to report that. So basically, schools will have to report the situation to Department of Homeland Security. This information is going to be readily available to the Border Patrol agents and to USCIS agents and to consulates. And that's how they will know if you are, as a student, if your school, what type of classes your school is going to be offering. What are you going to do in this situation? In this situation, a student have very limited options. If, let's say, his or her school is going online only and it's not allowed, then the school must be changed, right? Have to find a new school that will provide programs that are going to be suitable for F1 visa in the circumstances. So transfer, what's it called, transfer. Or you will have to change school, right? If you're outside of the United States, you will have to have a new process, new admission, and so on. Or you potentially may file for change of status if you qualify, right? You may file for change of status if you qualify. So those are the options. Those who have OPT, of course, they have their own different story. But basically, what we're going to see is that almost like employment visas, F visas, are going to be very limited. And basically, international students are going to be thrown out of the legal immigration ship, so-called, right? So that's where we stand. Now, I have to say that certain universities are already filing lawsuits against that decision. And perhaps they will be successful because we're not operating under normal times. In normal times, we have a pandemic going on, and for the public safety, these rules were implemented. Okay, so there is hope there that the rules will be modified, the rules will be changed. So please, now I can answer some of your questions, guys, if you have them. Let me see. Do you have any hint about N400's interviews rescheduled in New York City? Are they planned before the furloughs in August, like the oath ceremonies? I have no information about that, unfortunately. I think there was some information that USCIS is trying to schedule as many interviews as possible, and they will start rescheduling them after July 4th or something like that, but none of my clients personally received any reschedule notices, so it's hard for me to comment on the situation. They make these announcements and they sound great, but my clients haven't received any reschedule notices. Maybe somebody did. I do receive some decisions on work permits, waivers, decisions on applications that do not require interviews. So those applications, even though slowly, are still being processed. Some new filings will have to wait for the receipt for a very long time, much longer than normal times, especially if you're filing something with Vermont Service Center. Don't forget the new rules coming up, new rules about asylum and work permits. So I have a suspicion that those delays may be connected to the new rules, because what happens is that your application is going to be subject to the rules on the date when USCIS stamps your application is being submitted on a certain date. So I think recently we saw a lot of applications being bounced back for bogus reasons, really, just so you can submit them back to USCIS, but that causes delays. And this delay is going to subject you to the new rules. So try to do your best for the application not to be rejected. But in my experience, sometimes they get rejected for reasons that you would never predict. And some of them are really bogus reasons. Like they say that you didn't check something off when you clearly did. But who are you going to argue with? You know, they have there is no opportunity for you to appeal a rejection, really. You just have to resubmit and argue that you submitted something within the time limits later. So this is where we stand with student visas. I also wanted to mention a little bit about proclamations and preference categories. Basically what's happening with the presidential proclamations and which people are allowed, not allowed to come in. I wanted to make one point, just because I receive a lot of inquiries about that, is that the proclamation applied, both proclamations applied to people, proclamations about immigrant visas and non-immigrant visas applied to those who did not have a valid visa on the date the proclamation was issued, okay? There is an open question for those who had a valid visa prior to proclamation, but it expired because a person could not enter the United States due to COVID. What's going to happen to these people? And so far, I've been hearing that consulates refuse to revalidate visas like that, because technically a person did not have a valid visa on the date of the proclamation. Now, if the person had a valid visa on the date of the proclamation and then the visa expired, they should be able to revalidate that when the consulates are going to be reopened for the visa processing, okay? So these are updates for today. Thank you for joining me, guys. Like, share, and I hope to see you soon.